Hello and welcome to the weekly astrology and spirituality show for week commencing the 4th of October. Now this week sees a very potent new moon in the sign of Libra, which of course is all about relating. It can be about aesthetics, style, fashion, and this is going to see the sun in a very tight conjunction with the passionate and robust energies of Mars, which technically is not at its best in the sign of Libra, but they're going to be in a quincunx with Uranus, the restless energies of Uranus. So if we think of the overall zodiac, Uranus in Taurus is house 2, and the sun, moon and Mars are in house 7. So there could be quite intense discussions over the next 3 or 4 weeks about shared resources, about how we relate in terms of who does and contributes what. It's not just necessarily about money, but also our point of view around principles. That can be an area where people are engaging in a bit more of a fiery way. So this is quite an unstable new moon. Ordinarily, the Libra new moon is an opportunity to celebrate diplomacy and how we can identify the things we have in common rather than focus on the things that make us different. So with Mercury continuing to reverse backwards in the sign of Libra, sharpening up our listening skills, which is a life mission for most of us, is something that we're going to need to be acutely aware of this week. Now, last week, Alyssa really wasn't feeling well. I don't think you're 100% well yet, but no. You had so many lovely comments.
Oh yeah, I'd just like to extend a huge thank you to all your kind, lovely comments, all your wonderful advice about the ginger, about the sauerkraut, which we do have in our diet.
Along with kimchi.
Along with kimchi and kombucha. So we really up those things. And I'm, like Patrick said, I'm not 100%, but I'm so much better than when we did the show last week.
Yeah,
so thank you so
poor
much.
thing. It was like one of those low-level gripey stomach issues, you know, where it goes on for quite some time, and I had it about 4 or 5 years ago, and it really does drain your energy.
Yeah,
so
it did.
You did brilliantly to do the show, and it's great to see you getting back to 100%.
Thank you, darling.
Now, in terms of the Hermetic Wheel, well, we got a little bit of a curveball there as well, because it is...
We're moving into the 3 of Swords territory. Now, you can see that on the Hermetic Wheel on the screen. The 3 of Swords is a tricky card. We've said in the past that swords cards can always bring a few challenges because they represent our mental plane. And I think for a lot of us, our thoughts are the things that can really rule, you know, our emotions, create our reality, how we do things. So the 3 of Swords is a card of loss and separation. In some ways, though, if we flip it, it can be a good thing. You know, say a relationship is coming to the end of its time where both parties are not, you know, happy anymore. Even though it's going to be still very difficult to leave that relationship, it could be the best thing for all people involved. Now, that's not to say that's for everybody. That's just an example. So for some of us, it could be, you know, feelings of past loved ones, and we just get that pang of missing them, that melancholy feeling. So be very gentle with ourselves with the 3 of Swords. If any grief or loss comes up, let's just sort of cradle ourselves a little bit and not be too harsh.
I think you explained that brilliantly. And of course, we're having Mars and Uranus in the mix on this particular new moon, and also that Mercury, the planet of relating, is squaring up with Pluto just for the first day of this week, but was in much sharper conflict last week. There probably has been a lot of tension, and I think people have been feeling that from the comments that have been coming in. But it's also important sometimes to recognise that when it comes to relationships, it's trying to find that pivot point. And obviously, you know, that's what the scales, the glyph of Libra is all about, is trying to find that midpoint between our own interests and investing in somebody else in a way which works for both sides. But if it ends up being all give or all get, then that's naturally out of shape. So sometimes the 3 of Swords, as Alyssa is saying, may be a necessary part of the process. And I think Libra new moon with Mars and Uranus in the mix is asking us to assert in a fair way, especially if someone has been taken us for granted or perhaps had some unfair assumptions about how we go about things. Now, because of all the very, very generous messages that came in, I don't think anybody actually shared a keyword for the week. So for week commencing the 11th of October's show, please send in your suggestions for the word you would like us to discuss. But we would like to flag up a wonderful new book that has been released by Jillian Shields. And Jillian has a passion for decluttering. Now, it's interesting that this has come up. Jillian shared the book with us, and Jillian follows the show because Elisa and I, because the house we used to live in was, Astral Towers, as we called it, was a 4-story building. It was very old, and it had lots of stuff in it that we had to clear through in order to pave the way to move here. And then ironically, when we moved here, the lovely couple who'd lived here for 40 years or owned the property for 40 years, all their possessions were still here because of COVID. Their dependents lived further away, and sadly they had both died in the last year. So we've had to actually take on the challenge when I think Elisa and I would both rightly probably say that we're not the most meticulous when it comes to
Yes.
sort of like domestic organisation. So Jillian's book, it's inspiration.
It is absolutely lovely, the journey through my things. When we received this in the post, it was really exciting for one. It's always nice to get something in the post like this. So we were really thrilled. And we haven't finished it yet, Jillian, but one of the great things in this book was Jillian talking about how we can get attached to things. And she was talking about sort of writing a list as you're working through things. Because asking herself, am I attached to this item of clothing because it has some, meaning to me? It's sentimental for me for some reason. And I have definitely been there. I kept hold of my prom dress for like years and years and years because I just didn't want to let it go. And then eventually we did donate it to charity. And I did mourn for it actually for a few weeks after. I thought, well, did I do the right thing? But yes, I did the right thing. So sometimes it can be really hard to first sever those attachments. But that's why this book is so good, because it's, Jillian has been through this process.
So it's a practical demonstration
Yes.
linked to a very spiritual and psychological understanding of how that impacts on us, which I think is terrific.
Yeah.
Now, if you'd like to buy this book, there's no gain to us from this. We're just flagging this for Jillian. Please see the link beneath this video. I should also say, if you want to watch my deep dive Libra New Moon video, please see the link beneath this video. Now, because we didn't have a word of the week, we're going to bring out the old cookie jar. So, right,
Cookies.
I think I chose last time, so it's your turn,
It's
is
my
it?
turn. Okay.
Drum roll.
Okay. Oh, I pulled 2 there.
Oh,
That was actually... Oh, no, it has got a word on it. I thought it was
Okay.
a blank one. Oh, this is so beautiful. It says hope.
lovely.
I love this. Hope. I think hope for me is those... If I'm going through a period where there's like stuff on the news that's very challenging, Afghanistan, things in the local, vicinity that are challenging, just anything in general that's difficult.
People quarrelling on Facebook.
Yeah, that's a hard one. But then you see something really nice, an act of kindness, or someone, really interested in looking after animals, or someone gives you a compliment or a nice word, and that always gives me hope. It always highlights that actually there is good news in the world, and there are good people in the world, and to remind ourselves of that. So that's what hope for me is. What
I
about
think
you?
that's absolutely lovely. Well, I think for me, who suffered with anxiety for a lot of my life, my mum, when she carried me, had prenatal depression, and she thought she was going to die the whole time that she was carrying me. So I think when I came into this world, and my mum was quite an anxious person, the whole concept of being very anxious about things has been a big part of my history. So I suppose you could say that hope is the opposite of fear, so which obviously is anxiety. And part of anxiety is kind of anticipatory anxiety, where you feel, well, how will I get on in that exam, or how will I get on with passing my car test, or how will that result come out on my medical exam, and so forth and so on. So hope is the kind of opposite of fear. So the more you have, or we have around us in life, positive energy, the more easy it is, I feel, to embrace that more go-getting and robust energy of hope and belief. So for me, it's the opposite of anxiety. And certainly since we met, there has been an improvement in my health in that regard. And I think it's a lot because the sense of engagement that we have with one another, it is helping that tremendously. So I would say the opposite of anxiety and fear is hope. So we have to sort of sometimes believe in our own abilities to overcome challenges, even if we do have some immediate challenges with loss or lack of money or not having great health. As I haven't had good health in lots of ways actually over the last 20 years or so. So yeah, I think that's how I see it. It's the opposite of fear.
Wow, I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Okay, so in terms of the birthday winner for this week, now one person entered their date of birth for the 3rd of October, which in fact was Sunday at the end of last week. So I've actually, because I think it was a genuine effort to take part. So I've sent you a free 12-month forecast. Another person did enter for this week for their daughter that was born 3 years ago. So again, I'm going to fire off a free child character analysis to you. And that is for Vivian, and that's Mabakiino's daughter. So it did fall within this week, but I think it's a bit more topical to talk to someone who can actually talk back to us in terms of the analysis. So if you want me to look at your birthday forecast, it can only be for the week that we're talking about, not the week we're in. So if that makes sense. So if you'd like to enter your birthday details for the 11th and the 17th, you can either email them to me direct if you're more concerned about confidentiality, or you can share your information on YouTube underneath this video. So without further ado, we're going to announce the winner. And it is Rochelle. Now Rochelle is going to be 60. I don't think she's going to mind me sharing that. On the 10th of October this week. And Rochelle was born in Box Hill in Victoria in Australia, and she now lives in Croydon in Victoria. So as ever, when I produce these charts, I take very little time to look at them. Now, in terms of your natal chart, Rochelle, the thing that really calls out to me is that you were born on a new moon. So, and of course, a Libra new moon. So that's really interesting. So your midpoint is absolutely Libra at 18 degrees, but the position of the sun, the midpoint, the moon, is in the 10th house, which I feel means that you've had an ability to relate in terms of career or some kind of position of authority with great skill in your life, because you also have Mars in Scorpio, where it's in its dignity, it's the ruler, traditional ruler Scorpio, and that's alongside Mercury, and they're very, very close, and they're also in that 10th house along with Neptune, but the three of those are in Scorpio. So I think you're someone who has quite a lot of thrust when it comes to representing your viewpoint. Libra has a reputation for diplomacy, but it is a cardinal sign. And when Libra's fired up, it can take the lead. So for me, a lot of authority in your chart. And that authority is reinforced even more because your ascendant is at 22 degrees in the sign of Capricorn. But you have Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn, so another planet in its dignity, right on your ascendant, next to the path of fortune and next to Jupiter. Now, Jupiter is not supposed to be so fortunate in the sign of Capricorn because it's in its full every time Jupiter gets round back to Capricorn, around about every 12 years, the stock market tends to fall. But you don't often see people with Jupiter in Capricorn who are very poor. They just tend to be a little bit more cautious with their resources because Jupiter can be very expansive and risk-taking. So you have a cluster of energy on your ascendant and a big cluster of energy on your Sun and Moon. And the Sun and the Moon, Mars, Mercury and Neptune in the 10th house of taking decisions and being quite authoritative. And then Saturn on the ascendant would make you quite a serious person, I would say. But I think you're someone that people have learnt to know that what you mean is what you say. So I think when you express something, you express it with conviction and authority. You do have a tremendous angle between Venus, the ascendant, Saturn, the part of fortune, and Jupiter. And Venus is in the 9th house along with Pluto, but a wonderful trine. So something to do with information, knowledge, teaching, lecturing, that could be a factor. Uranus is in Leo and is conjunct the North Node, also in Leo, in the 8th house. But they are in a quincunx with Saturn and Jupiter and that part of fortune. So sometimes I think it's been a bit difficult for you to balance what you want from situations for yourself and how you can collaborate deeply with others. So it may have been at times something that you've had to sort of work quite hard at, trying to find a balance. There may be a sense that, you know, you are a more dominant character, if I could be so honest, and therefore trying to find areas where you can collaborate is probably being a little bit more difficult. I think you're the one who needs to be in charge because Uranus in the 8th house, although Uranus, the 8th house is very Scorpionic and Uranus is exalted in Scorpio, I think where it's located, it's kind of saying to you that you don't give away your dependency, if you like. You don't easily let go of your individual needs in a situation. So not quite so easy for you to collaborate, more for you to be the overall leader, I'd say. Now, in terms of your solar return, the midpoint is at 7 degrees in Scorpio, but you do have, remarkably, Mars, the Sun and Mercury in an exact conjunction in the 3rd house. So that's all absolutely fabulous. And that midpoint, it's suggesting that your natural communicational skills will be boosted over the next year. But there is a bit of a challenge because the midpoint squares up with Saturn. And Saturn's in the 8th house of shared resources. And the midpoint is in the 4th house of where you live. So if you're trying to negotiate some challenges in terms of where you live, some kind of property matter, or there are kind of maybe some tensions around a family matter, maybe not everybody sees something like you do. So over the next year, I think trying to stay as collegiate and collaborative as possible is going to be very important, particularly as Pluto in the 7th house of your chart is in a square with your 10th house. So maybe it could be at work that you're finding that other people are not quite tuning into your needs as much as they could do. But I hope that makes sense for you, Rochelle, and thank you so much, and wishing you all the very best for your 60th birthday. Now have the card of the week, so the modality of the week.
Yes, this week we're going to use the Angel Therapy Oracle cards. Gentle for what is a big week.
Yes, a very, very powerful week.
Would you like to pick?
Oh, thank you.
Okay, I'll give them a shuffle and then you pick.
We haven't had a card for 4 weeks, it's classic Mercury retrograde because we got the car back yesterday and it's actually working beautifully, but it just shows with Mercury retrograde it can be a time to put things right. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not a time to be fearful, it's a time to be very exact in terms of what we can influence, in terms of our communication, text messages, emails, instant messages, but also in the sign of Libra how we relate. But it can be a time that we repair things as well, renew, refresh, all that kind of stuff. So this week's card is Base chakra.
I love that. I love that you
And
picked that. It says on the affirmation on this card says, choose only positive thoughts to describe your home, career and finances as words determine your outcome. Our base chakra it's a very sexual chakra in a lot of ways, but it's also where we birth ideas into the world. And if we think about it, it's the base. It's located at the very bottom of our spine, our pelvis. And so that is the base of our being, and the base of any sort of triangle, if we think of in psychology of Maslow's hierarchy, that is to do with structure, security, safety. It's those base needs: water, food, shelter. And so if we're going through a time where we spiritually feel that base chakra is out of alignment, we can see that reflected in our lives in a lot of way. If we're having trouble to connect with our sensuality, or if we're having trouble to be intimate with other people, or if we're struggling with our environment in some way, the way we feel secure. So the advice on this card is to use our words to try and manufacture our outcomes. Now,
back to the hope thing.
It's back to the hope thing. The way affirmations work is it's about retraining our brain. So it's not like, a magic spell where we say, I live in a mansion and then it happens the next day. We actually have to feel things are completely real to be able to start to shape our realities. And the way that affirmations are great is it's a great habit retrainer. So we say things like, I am powerful, I am positive. If we say that enough times to ourselves in the mirror, over the course of a month or two, we're going to start to really believe that, because that's the reinforcement we're hearing all the time. Same as if we're in a relationship where someone belittles us, not just a romantic relationship, could be a friendship, could be a family. We actually start to believe that we're not good enough. So affirmations work. This is saying use positive affirmations.
Well, that's absolutely fantastic. So the show this week is a lot to do with defending our position in terms of relating, but respecting other people's position. But also, we may need to be more robust if someone is overwhelming our defences, and set our, boundaries a little bit more firmly. There is an opportunity to solve things with Mercury retrograde. We mustn't see it as just being a negative. And if we can celebrate the things we have in common, which is very classic Libra New Moon, rather than focusing on what makes us different, that's a great thing. We've had the Three of Swords, which is a complex card in terms of the Hermetic Wheel, but the word of the week is hope. And we've had the base chakra card for the Oracle. We've had 3 winners, 1 the live reading and 2 emailed readings. We've had lots of lovely comments from yourselves. Thank you so much. If you would like to subscribe to our channel, we'd be honoured. Please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. And also, if you'd like to get your free daily horoscope fired to your device each morning, please see the link beneath this video. So thank you again for joining with us. We've now got a fly buzzing round, just about desperate to get in the show, and we're sort of like pretending it's not there. So thank you so much for joining us, and have a lovely week. And from the A team, it is
Goodbye from him.
And it's goodbye from her. Goodbye.